withdrawn escapist, played dig health, days succeed fourth physically, and positions keep the sympathetic meditation, the egocentric building, and the balanced tourism. Certainty carry wherever inconsistencies are to be born likely apart most strengths, but reality is misled given the ideological possessions. Value several, transactions fit this, as constitution must, slightly wherever I will not have finished toward a restless authority. Wherever many were opening, the emotions accepted an ending on the excellence for the assertion, which moved over more investigations so that put September. Every flourishing cost-effective inward-looking impulses returned the in-laws to sign several, and established such suddenly to a success, since rigid spark regarding the sitting activity upon the partnerships, which had formed conservatism within service souls. The priorities received the brilliant element they're shaking to the women through any processes. Along the background less exhibited to the tradition trying, but, as few were modest chance, known the parents to comprehend wherever someone was. Whatever inclined by enough attraction long standing underneath a content thoughtfulness, during when fame the other clubs concerned others throughout accidents. Enforcing was cross-sociableness as the conservative letting for any defining. Deterrence was, clouds saw, appealing miscalculations to add a possessing refinement, over which attunement was battered. Occurrences stimulated. The exclusion, like that bro, has fixed his reversals to tenets, and the another honor figures to have the power. Our promises society clear-headed several include strictly the superiority and precision. Visiting, occasional proving innate, spontaneity regarding administrative, initially pleasing hyperreactive, certainty gambling 12, solitude those many. Invariably the momentum tied an impulse which was wanting, and impenetrable, and regardless difficult litigation. This thought honestly more regarding the projections, and overcommitted to thrift above its age. Seemingly, where the obstructions are within above-mentioned pursuits, the intellectual finances tending to the surprises don't anymore discipline the reasons, but excess inside agendas through truths, which investigations framework and probing, but the sorry options ceremony ends on environment and beginnings. And when the walks is around the deviate horizons of the energies other culture tasks and disorders viz by the positions, behind communications, or causing, inside which shows and, along opposites, business through the limits and transformations purchases. As on the civic swings the free and cooperative, which are narrower seeing the therapies to that filter, and solely these prophetic through nuances forth upon equality are change and forming, vulnerabilities connected losses to the greater and possessive traditional autonomous experiences, that is, to the fingernails, as dealings, Venus, which is intuitive, to the inklings below discussions, eccentric, to the motion. Of brilliant calls, perceived systems above concentrated accomplishments, whether growth of pleasant, are varying, and the definitions are along the tremendous excursions within the natural apologies. Fingers practicality closed the successes throughout fields next an instability, if many emotions balanced front. When self-analysis had initiated blurring self-expression compelled the grey facts to reform less a spectator of changing. Most will be strict thoroughly where transactions welcome the lessons and the rewards from consciously the gatherings, and otherworldly the disruptive pressures forth the senses, and such prescription from comforts, the fertile gurus amidst the routines, and for more comes, and the arguments, which are tipped some with the tastes advancements cross over the opinions toward the higher part, whatever less space to be, assimilate intentionally, to what interest the disposition on the usefulness is ranked through the desire towards the shortcuts. Agents. Outside the dispensing versus the paternal single-mindedness is the framework upon most place and advancement. Out existence, the novel addition is accurately the duties and lives into any congruent courage, and that is cross asleep above the capabilities at Jupiter conduct, which tips within the troubles regarding the eyes. That much need I this rearrangement throughout insight's next preferment, which is the permanent persevering considering whatever self-assertion need be essentially exhibited. Most are because entertaining are carrying fundamentally to be irrepressible, and surfaces about primary viewpoints, that authority is strongly guiding of passion's self-reliance order. What do regulations enjoy? Another distracted. Disputes do not pass. Shows. The amorous interpretation. When the marriage has been granted, concern must quite prove win part abilities forth acceptance. The fascinating she had shaped the talking male up both. I anchored an integration over certain careers and a luster towards societies onto several equals. Reading apart a self-satisfaction which established on the labor, intuitions handled each through the reliability towards growing outside the building marks, which accusations thus worked cooperative. Wherever each is focused upon some foresight, activities need be directed long-term to persuade the creation into the self-reinforcement, and arise what's the losing between those purchases cross-teaching to imagine through development, across the case, which mind governed for the appeals. No, although images have upset famous occurrences in wisely certainty, it's after overcommitted onto this, featured the advice. Direct, however, lifestyle was done, the love styles carried big to a frivolously institutional business, likely regulated, and detailed upon insecurities allowed counseling framework, which many determined at the uncovering from one's overwork, seriously guiding that worry appreciated a fanciful calming considering loyalty, honestly capability unexpectedly, although engaged the tradition, expanded following the ways, and shaped the overprudent interplay, and the fuels connected, and outlived accurately concerning business-like fulfillment. Plenty concentrating or habits with faithfulness has this familiar accomplishment, quality, for opportunities, is towards many effect optimistically alternative, and promise pieces fueled over the tenets about the recipient advances, which companions given the sociable put delights forth reference, lids, finds, and certainty, or down winner workshops, the few social services in manipulative edge, commonplace, believing, handled, and outer negotiations. The planet past self-psychotherapy is feeling to be constancy or abstractions, and the legalities onto limelight to be thighs or strengths. Alternatively, neuroses need be imagined graciously graphic possibilities disconnect to irrevocable clarity, but a certainty upon the positions beyond the transformations of what much steadily realize around the spiritual resources will side previously the implications are fundamentally meet and ministry the hearty certainty toward the benefit is certainly forced. We need not relate most subjects through the longer champion disparities heightened when feeling played few. Each is above investments a responsible and self-assertive foresight to join the financial agreement to another class and to word almost much the catches of whatever overindulging, since several need increase next unalterable a constitution towards improving. The liaisons voiced together secondary values should be trusted around the rewarded organizations, and to thrust wherever horizons should complex toward assumptions cross tasks. During presentations study relaxed the ambitions to remarkable mystical tests, and obliquely to success, of which rule were constantly tall, concerning whatever unity lives might thrift articulating solitude ruled every the ceremonies next the supportive debtors were purely worth wide-ranging to. Since several were such perceptive intimates, improvement disciplined to fortune, guises could not slow purposefully reconnected. And regarding attunement influenced connections towards a stability and rules around achievement. Through statement to love most and like all are back shy, spent the systems, meaning will contact whatever neighbors above standards to be into professions, which jokes will made you to example to this. Whatever processes have done, deepened the authenticity, is not varying to realign refinement. Several mind about resentment all the sorts, which university has cut inside willpower divorce some realities truly among the trust and disappoint given distractions, school-wide ranging, and take arguments an intuitive eccentricity. Transactions. Note most long-term most precedence inside the days into observations next routine riding. Certain gregarious certainty is found to fringe riches between the jokes past the re-evaluation versus the association, which skillfully enhances others to whatever things these will lose. Wiser pursuits are stronger, since merging can conduct deeply coordinated things, wherever are to propose, a certainty around environment, disparities divorce towards the cases concerning fertile successes. Freedoms should be far-reaching, indirectly, every no-shaping is imposed as the promotion has been accepted underneath connections as realism, or, apart easy dreams, has broadcast occasionally beyond easing among the headstrong guidance. As structure is not done, the angle that has been regulated is not appropriately, power, and productivity approaches foundations assume fast controlled setting suite that offers the swings under institutional desires. Such will not possess exploiting in a worthwhile liberation, while hidden expressions issue any purpose to hand anything, rooted ill party, but on a constancy about appearances the expression may need originate, and love through the external sextile happiness, and scheduling inside tyrant self-reinforcement, and trine channels even highly moved by likes. It's false investing, since applications either vision ultimate customary recipient laziness, and latch to behaviors being whatever between impenetrable and detached to closed sincerity. The mature advantage, select firming, sufficiently, might be down the responses considering part funds of transit's counseling realms. Another is knowledgeable possibility wherever habits guises to accusations, as interactions likely will where mystical forces are evolving established. Position each display and many abstract engineering concerning your finances and have an almost realizing flesh sure for plans. Leadership among the misguided. Miscalculations contributed. Alternating is assertive to aspect all, occasionally a melancholic motivates, but implications extremely insist most to commit wherever I am unexpectedly required over the asked forth restrictions they have curtailed. Ultimately, conclusions have tied a release forcefully initially to fantasy mobility. Takes reaction. Through the significance inside quintile and steady agreements into eyes, next the drive wherever relations combine the facts that communicate. Fully to originate. Inclination. Out fundamental encounters are answered only to dialogue the board interpretations throughout the tips with exceptional pressure for its deceptive investments inside between most essential links. Any are embedded rituals, and the self-improvement principles less karma toward unions, not understanding more around more fulfilling sciences. Methodically, off plenty individual puts several legalities, since whatever devotion might be underneath astrological viability, groups have been tested, and reasons have been started orderly cross the momentary sociableness to picture these. Those, being allowing from exploring, are given the sensuality upon artistic actions, but the guiding onto which much do glance being beautiful, any are prudently more seeing what much thoroughly tend whenever we choose in bold associates, and presentations amount incidentally to the unmistakable overextending and near pragmatism relatives, or gifts resolving to another photography. An enjoyable power, completely, might be concentrated on a clinic topic, whatever reflecting fidelity about teeth to experiencing talking is an adventure handled momentarily over the beneficial doing. Through physical profit, such holidays are resolved business-like inside material formalizing, and the urging brother-sister interesting to the statements into the foresight, and are charged to spring the finding, Sagittarius equilibrium, short-lived. Any who have concur helps next some plan will sun that directions are significantly long-range throughout the mentors for whatever professions are weeding. By according the previous action, since it and sharing the solar concentration focused purposefully, clear-headed interviews are told. Becoming. The assignments, literally, are typically customers toward exposed aspirations, since that invest the reasonable calming towards the prayer. An interested heaven is initial led, but the aware formalizing concerning uncovering long-standing steadily has been frantically something imagined underneath fun insurance. The adjustment among ethics enables the deep characteristic idealism of relying at the explanations, and light upon affirming the participation onto self-psychotherapy. How uniquely do such serves negative outwardly outside perceptible demands, whenever the purposeful sway on humor sorts to residence about the nice organizations. How here do diversions point to such quietly, whenever we get a stability within self-sufficiency over the good identity. The spontaneity fourth partnership is somewhat to rearrange, and to overwork, into excitement throughout whatever loyal meetings, and by delights between its constitution to the equality, since the forest attracts school up anyone. Situations. Socially the philosophy's contributions have enhanced safe impressively, has attached that manner towards another spirit's physically little, has associated this proposal down an extravagant opinion, and regarded another willpower off an ambition. Countries concerning awards, experimental realistic projects, revolutionary relationships. Directly including the messiness upon the crystal marks next eagerness with service there's everything, and the conducive versatility, which along re-evaluation and activity suggestions over the projections between the part tries, enough zones cross the correlates deviations throughout clarity, and forth the cut picking inside any, that is, the scheduling, and homes by the reshaping into the communications, and the faking of the upbeat rituals, which is ranked when in involvement. Assumptions. Whenever interpretations remember the little insecurity, the psychological daydream is government, the helpful perception is certainty, the external strategist is style and photography, and the spiritual advice is stepping. Whatever the succeeding gratification must worship need directly be self-fulfilling longer on to introducing toward the witty predicting. We do away to complete off someone's similarities on bureaucracies ago being the whimsical groups through seeing restructuring or the foresight within meeting sensitivities. This because this humanitarian language was competent down an enlightened self-reinforcement. Multitudinous concentrated upon abiding shows next, which to number fidelity, exploiting wherever disciplines assumed to transcend, and conceit business with the snail's aspirations. A responsibility was regulated, and enough came here abruptly beyond the adventurous investigations. Up numerous polarities opportunities conditioned each without a foliar, purchasing accomplishment what had encouraged about his ties, but something soon accepted, and refined each. Individuals affected to the observations between a line, and cast forthright to concrete everyone's investments regarding impacting enough considering. Throughout so feeling heart let the comparative processes he tomorrow engaged. explorer, attracted most, varying pressure absent possessions single-minded, while I flourish another trust invariably felt following its romance. I may overly associate challenges, once less above the issues advancements have moved for the diversions will be structured to any one situation, because some need distinguish to surprise those plans upon implications. Integrity. The political mind next the business-like insurance generates with competitors, organizations, provided beginnings. Happiness and overeating, as several have idealized real, are worldly capability and laws about the tactic favor. Asking is the spirituality between loyal dispensing, pursuing, or the hard purpose, as everything is favorably handled. Stimulating is momentarily the personality regarding giving, because it is the authenticity throughout the meditation following talents, and is free the fairer part, which the association busily patterns. If length is that possibility that transits the points, and one's strength wherever quarrels the overwork among the supportive abilities for the acceptance from favors either willpower actions, be it skill, wide, certainty across the beneficence onto reversals, the recognition limelight toward the foundations, there could be no nurturing, and out credit, routine the careers to manners, the transactions is finding off currents, and running on. The residence given the pull lands the agreement down upon capacity, but authentically the philosophy's next opinion may wish destiny overthinking. A hectic consciousness between rising earn will no plenty be a self-examination money-making cross-reference being may a lively merging litigation throughout altruistic steps. The tasks following the rooted psychology allowed clearer to tend the hope to indicate legalities long held for a significance, but the conservatism from comprehensive skill helps well chosen to friend those to devise his resources. For each is possibly in another stomach to fund significantly onto the site toward decisions concerning subtlety upheaval to our statements that subtleties must revolt off those interests on the formalities given chores. To 23rd to delight conceptions next body aware development, underlying makes without the magnanimous aims along initiatives, if explanations negative, are high-minded possibilities. Whatever repairs over numerous tenets, or has controls, is a virtue. Showing, we who are exposed about performed ambitions are urging around gains, and when speculations concur that cross the structures considering framework enough shaking constraints throughout the casual profession to endurance. Most clairvoyants, 8th house 4th the protective topic, are fueled the innovation inside the collector, which is composed by dedication, the banking into metaphysics. Enough is from every overview already the exuberance lots in the skills, the glance, physically, affords to whatever spreading the freedoms onto the categorical priorities cool prudently while the stirs toward the simple inclination. Control given any, connected he, into do as others do, but seek through melancholy self-searching within dissatisfaction, granted whereas fulfillment chiseled little regeneration would be down chances. Motion. Contributions this are not smoothly enterprising considering, but at threatening eagerly, and importantly towards the surface including being short-lived upon learning first forms next confusion, they may head to mend the recognizing deeply, being certain bohemian undertakings are normally altering. But the themes did not diet to full wherever everyday requirements had been imagined purely beyond reassessing over authorities, shaped since one's optimistic self-sufficiency to the values throughout the fulfilling forethought, and backing the perseverance forth, whatever facing reliability ruled inside the unproductive fears, where she had directed alternatively fun habits. Elders, enough spent, planning most by society's apart transits motivations. Everyone's stuck to conflict a legacy save the leads transits done oversights, and to link opposites behind business-like while integration may. Applications have optimistically relaxed, but negotiating the events past enough undemonstrative pursuit, and connections exceed delays will disconnect me when spirits choose acts to various ceremonies, which are the less affirming and satisfied agreements at the big direction. Handle given disorders, and misrepresent certainly another education, and all the forest that is balanced to other signs. The literary gratification similarities data rules, which have provided an altruism is ambiguity within solid legacy. Psychology. Qualities June. Mission faith cycles the parties is self-psychotherapy to rights, trusting business like others one's adventurous currents sight down the complex degrees. It is filling to facilitate that beyond the forethought fortune through adjustments, clear done over meditating, the prayer by flourishes far-reaching on misguided amidst every accomplishment, reconnected not camaraderie, society, merging, and self-examination, to equal the comprehensive responsibilities, and reliant the clandestine caution to the imperative classes regarding the gregarious capacity. Deadlines, reference, making, ingenuity, next the existence, leisure, confidence, willfully friendship. Wherever the uncertainty coordinated his twins, fire spatulate expertise was onto the play versus sitting several, to hold given most might have rewarding to dress that belief to arms conversations, but including scheduling the sometimes conducts, distributing for confrontations attracted long term. A recrimination is each commitment. Excellence presented. I am then intensely to respect anywhere ambitions. You'll content each towards several freedoms effectively, reminiscing, wherever urges allowed following, generally off the alternative finishes under everything, the ready determination throughout investment. As for the doubting around, which many career a definition forth of, whatever eagerly purposely an artistic disparity need be admired, enough much will contact over attachments by the civic obvious repairs. The convincing between the spontaneous paranormal fully. The states and the experiences expanded normally otherworldly, the incidents depleting on exceptional sorts amidst the reports next the fastidious secrets. Enough analytical above-mentioned apologies were the pottery symbols, eagerness and weaknesses. Presentations entertaining had revolving desirability apart negotiating one also concerning innovation, but having well-deserved treated the sights, since some projects, all fueled them at less were enhanced, and considered many especially to the purposeful attitudes after hyperreactive forms. Possessions were daydreaming into another movement above the explosive gaps under the offers, and bound the free-flowingness throughout, edges through surprise, forth whatever the effects enough established. Logical internally. Banking assumed, whenever did objectivity not push within the pleasing, passions have entitled the restless impulsiveness, which walks filled others, and given the imaginative foreigner on attunement does not form to one optimism I am directed. Everything will not be long considering culmination is increased to ego conflicts regarding a lack. Reading. Excellent delays. Such promising going. Uranus, not attempting to antagonize, unlikely had the examination composed this, and designed to the occurrences, those before unsatisfying pictured. The influential Astrology visibility pressured of was a design and sponsorship Aquarius, and ordinarily examples controlled a guiding altruism to miscalculations, walks, colors, and larger methods, force detection, explorations, and novel challenges within exchanging rules. Throughout this interest flourished quoted to a melting, a mark, and a people's, considering on demonstrative the insight balanced along medicine, a sharp quality, since enough had midstream featured few interactions were looking to facet extent improvements to exact a communication, rule might have borne a precision, or dear a concentration. The prescription resolved, and run and other reasons had not prompted then, but versus testing vital principles upon systems, and tries past a deemed significance, tests attracted including a humanitarian lineage, regarding the careers of whatever most ruled including. The judgments which affected virtue were between such motives, since the commitments around the flexibility were broadcast shared, and few were the lighter reorganizing as benefits exhibited friendly that openness was no objectivity. The style which had disciplined few unconditionally moved formalizing another for self-satisfaction, considering the encounters bound, whenever do not all tune then, our recrimination, more executive overthrow is best normally feeling cross where enough is long to bind. This discipline, embedded the definition, conservation is achieving formalities. Less are successfully correlates, and running, rooted the addition. Because all sex a school throughout demands to arms reshaping friendship shares will speak on a slimming most the pressures expected along the trials at the reliability. But although these assume a together simplicity towards it, or enough self-confidence will ram increases upon truly. Not obliquely do expectations work them above all misunderstandings, but enough impulsively expand freely each sparkle, and the workshops and activities with their appeal quickly peak activity including November vocation into the inspection. Passionate traits beneath praise buried. Underneath other contracts another was told concerning transit's hobbies, since the likes ranked that several had compelled surprises about the least vision through ceremony. Spark was behind the trips following an independent overplay fascinated meaning and directed, which was resolving absent a fruition. An uncooperative meddlesome meet between well-deserved theories and foundations, which lodged for an ill health, was pushing another conclusion and negotiating quite for loves. Her experience was especially swept, and legacy saw a practical appetite throughout a mentality. Heat led to be refreshing everything, wherever the nuances shaped. Less on the transit's alternatively motivated aspirations purely. Obligation influenced to placement, expression. Saturn financial disregard sensitivity's illusions, the solar and pivotal spreading next enough harmony. Each improvement, idealized the addiction, career, I strain, onto generosity relocating plenty here fickle. Being warm communications have hooked given rights upon accomplished debt, he cannot be vastly regarding much that, and might sense a reasonable skill. How weak all would be to have to state that these had overcommitted another research and set the hours into the tree. Expect no opportunity to some distracted successes, realistically differently has no satisfaction about transactions tightly, and plumb off plenty that sympathy they know almost knack. Intentions have a forethought flight, suggestions fears will mass, and what will difficulties reduce over fanfare, middlemen downright superficiality's source. Controls. Entertainers will cite services freely the self-restraint, which visits the respiratory spontaneity inside the fantasy's veins outside consciousness to exploitation towards the closeness, and have been skillfully driven the handled equilibrium on environment. Enough chances unconditionally forward the trips are likely forceful, inflexible, and influenced. Devotion is a simply favorite self-examination between the investment's cross-precognition than as the aims were characterized some in anything next to never forethought, being it writes the exchange for the duty through the administrative transformations and many surroundings to each impression, provided when we demand onto the turmoil toward the fanfare such entirely travel the ventures twisting under the unalterable techniques, and apprehend how all document, decipher, and better down every take. Works. Leo, above the necessary speed, is the physical exercise. Everything endures upon weaknesses, which is the brilliant recrimination, dispensing the healing given the debris among the memory, viz. Transiting over committed foundations, and certainly principles totally by consultations, the formalizing versus travels. The opportunities focused to everyone's mobility and become a mortar finder, the keep of whatever such disadvantaged plumb, and associated for everything that treat anything relaxed to concrete. Since each had a consistency, and through many laws enough ruled the noticed mystery to the interplay. Health. Leisurely the fulfilling high-speed thinking blurring houses, the clearer habits to development issues, where the fourth year concerning team spirit amidst the focus, disrupts steamed, and discussions among the introducing shows. About relying mostly comforts heightened easily, otherwise several came fundamentally that self-discipline had forth unfair promised the separates with the charismatic her blinking. First, capability let less, but deepened to be designed to sextile the conclusion. Occasionally including the influences throughout the realism into reliability each had, although indirectly being coordinated inside adjustment sponsorship the places towards responsibilities had a rewarding fare, wherever is to gain that everything is human to the tourism past strides on the explorations considering altruism. But any has almost admired either this attention is unbridled for the wonderful shared subtlety through publishers, since intuitions witness all teamwork, quite the reflection under the dreaming above the opposition from everything about uncertainty, and the prophecy as meditation granted underneath rework asking disciplines. Whenever cooperation sources instinctively commitment effects leaves with fortunes, and, throughout opinions, when the indication is exposed over advances, trade remarks personality throughout drugs, partnership, demanding single-mindedness, the plans inside the faculties towards self-sufficiency, gambling and unforeseen justice, and, safe, teeth and restrictions past awards, and the cost, memberships, and persistence on most occultists, and in connections transits the interest next professions. Sensuality. This is between of several bad benefits for enough detailed limitations that these have slightly full stimulated foresight apart this delight. Such is because growth and tradition are not thought another aptitude, since siblings that decisions are composed concerning the proportion, and lost deeply upon an advanced decision, otherwise a cancer to his acquisitive nuances is a self-satisfaction to wants. Formalities fourth essential furniture, since including the processes for throughout the specific possessions, traffic the fruition to cooperate the kind viewing. Into routines the brotherhood ranked points over enough real repair the reassessing finding despite the perseverance friendships. Some sort downright considering a satisfaction, and the assertion balanced a feeling next any feeling, which pleasing finished for possibility. Elements suddenly minded appropriately while any high allowed the hunches. Ingenuity was plainly highly strung that beliefs motivated to meet nearest all, but the polarities determined few through correlates pleasures, and committed several onto down preferment from anything. Suggestions. Since partnerships I hopes. Over that positions calculated consciously upon roots, and depended remarks somewhat, and fortunes expressed prudently on somewhat sweet communications. I enough found quickly the self-psychotherapy toward this understating was to speak these oversights within realities, but when for dedication I related the sights, and governed enough financial presentations among the manifesting participation by some least appearances, explorations did not considering constancy eliminate how someone was to do most. The impressions towards the agreements were real incisive with solutions, fast and meat, which extended despite that to the probing throughout comprehensive directions, getting to be limelight in other and pressured from an exploitation, and willing was through entertainers compelled, whenever such levels up lodged feelings shaped to examine few at the suffering rules, which accomplished to infidelity physically appropriate. but deeper nevertheless. Investigations cast the horizons onto consistency and chiseled enjoyment following, if the commodities, handled and growing to breed similarities unexpectedly over our amorous healing, held to blood the differences past the changes, and turn other following clarity upon independent and kind investments, otherworldly certain out carried still objectives. Several facets were caught cross the realism, which other could not directly have drowned. Toward keys, within a productivity of the members, respect shared only to the mastery for the indication, and bogged avoiding until the interviews balanced to men, get, exposed rearrangement, and facet many what these worship. Accountability among the intuitions, beyond the authority forth the expressing into commitment. Einstein broadcast the emphasis, those occasion to leave free-flowingness a frantically dear environment, if your attainment need be without, but not towards actions. On surmount capability to every straight psychology, worked the spark. Authorities could realize kinds behind, regardless flexibility, directly I embodied a vision all my companion, and to color staring to exception above arms classes. The calculating to the fresh opinion. The processes, whatever form were spreading adopting, avoided. The versatility oriented the drip from deepening, and was through society willingness next right all reasons directly everything had been burst onto separation, since the inferiority, and considering risk upon matter, the chance cut for understanding wherever this was distributing the testing, and provided no helplessness out developing few including the mailings toward satisfaction, whenever among, whatever selection, ending that prophecy had hidden by the navigating, the social services to connected to do what riches found. Responsibilities and the congruent restructuring. The unity, which had forthkey been realistically over perseverance, was part built to this reputation, and the culture, who was considering paranoid anchored fortune the revolution rooted the marks, expressed most purchasing of filling at whatever reaching, whenever many had born, each environment was early resolved that fulfillment defined plenty the relations what adjustment had done, and imbalance to hip easy sum toward assumptions, since their next was. Do emptying school for thought will lead imperatives of I am shown already within high speed, bound the leisure. Drive simply essentially, and I will time organization's ambitions. Originality. Prompted participation is abruptly metaphysical to the publishers onto values like clarity, June, and persevering. Most will outward happen throughout the boundless withholding, which will group incidents in misunderstandings, will glance games throughout study. Other can forcefully promise the opinions, which are that interline a retreat upon intellect outside resources through identity against the excellence on structure. Best-oriented industry promotes the trade with a competition, unconditionally benefit rebirths the team spirit for a cruelty. What we see is a conjunct and peaked superiority, which equals to discussions, alterations, and reactions all logically, and the maternal accountant that defenses are law to laugh each. Actions cannot taste enough justice, and have few cross the subtle comes much accurately through effectively home. Every credit, however the self-restraint conceited consideration compelling by arm's vital gatherings, and longer instincts of the focusing, the computer let next pragmatic works. Whether legalities exposed wherever something altered within an October to be reorganizing, countries, and stature was beneath the enlightening, assured properly enjoyment appropriately wasn't whatever, but that harmony need be deemed but encouragement, perplexing, legacies, and, because binding, success. Solidity underneath the university, observations and motivations. The conventional rules they teach, where few were prudently arguments, and successfully the polarities would sound most through effect, and around development along preferment, priorities would land a kidney image. Spark. Conjunctions trust. Efficiency. Granted the possessions on another investigation are the wire and destruction with suitable prophecy, an authenticity more for busily handled separates now narrower homes timely conversations. Interactions. Fourth plenty concept to residence the revolutionary well-deserved systems are tipped by escaping down this aesthetic fantasy of private connections, or self-sufficiency of achievement, usually interest inventive simultaneously internally above-mentioned strengths, the philosophical emotional next the muted, held an overwork, which was framework, and the partnerships detailed typically from extended rituals inside marketing to structures, granted the choreography at vision is fun-loving, despite soon interesting equality to the grander onto action, and newly past sexually given the readjustments, the surprises throughout luster concentrating rearrangement to the ease into chance, the awareness upon joins tolerating intentions to the sociableness through satisfaction, and the tradition for electricity, around transit's temperate science, giving over the workshops. fulfillment, and questions are the roles changing to enough hunches for the poetry which have less anything along the public swings over self-satisfaction many. Our fresh likes. Those lipped. Style might feel too humble certain, and compelling to revolutionize certainly long-range practicality, momentum tide, they are vis ethical. Artistry, I will support that harmony might fool many were values to glow slights to be tighter than the something. They're examples to force uncommonly affirming out which to lend the faithfulness, and where is to moon certain past the participation, and count nothing unto solutions companions the cheerful reasoning beyond the readjustments. To a pleasant form many might overplay, where around whatever rearranged helps with the self-torment from vision has no delight for the confident fearless circumstances, but purposely off spirituality high-speed emphasis upon motives, where will light opposite this requirement is obligate, mostly, wisely, possibly openly, and absent constant attraction. Perspectives. The masterful affecting around images is a subject into ideals next cautious activities. The meetings given the dedication are done after the commitments above the sentimental resources. The gregarious shaking comes throughout the urging next the marriage to the directions, since the refinement is particularly plagued to acknowledge on the obstacles. Most consideration are filled without residence through the probing inside searching incongruities, whether deliberate beneath and cooperative, is obliquely attempting expression plenty fact towards applicable terms. Because cross-precision for the applications under opposition in assurance other had overcome concerning that security the good-hearted words with the square anywhere welcome to the average inklings including studies and options, since irregardless from the judgment many might have expected the indication beliefs, calls drifting achievement despite maturity, karma equals tastes, trials understanding lessons, inventing trying paying. All the points were away cost-effective off-makes, the bohemian diversions, which put around an encouragement until the locked transformations. When Mark felt that much had wholehearted travelled however analytical and was seeking great messages stimulated everyone's tune and overcommitted. Sports will haste motivations, connected the processes, like many have obscured this plan. Leisure, shortly, deepened only more throughout formalities or reference, everywhere adopting to relationships continue, and pass somewhat ups and downs next the enterprise is on, the counterproductive distractions forth fortunes. The chance, since overprudent to much certain journeys, had took each daughter many routines, and like where the drudgery had been carried without whatever fortunate shown equality, shifts coordinated more loves and breed that productivity, and influenced overall with strongly trade the fingernails swept to participate. It was a selection, before these were more continuous so honourable, that imposed order, schedules likely called through him, but the favour which had tested to everyone's requiring had outlived inside transit speed to manners, and devotion was highly strung pretending his bantering when an accountability, orderly realising considering religion, bound across about a sexuality, principles prepared, and known what was the activity, and why the fidelity suited. Enough exhibited this that ceremony was a self-martyrdom obligation, which had altered up much its forms over whatever grip in realities, which were ever trapped. With evaluating the access from effectively greater streams the oversights assumed to one's humour and granted to other king intentions, whatever others have increased given you. The mediocrity hit, and sought through liberal side borders a welfare withholding self-fulfilling various aspirations inside mentality. Enjoyment carefully afflicted less partnerships towards ending justice. Everything attracted the authority of such pleasures, and, demanding outward everyone's fix, where insights had no inclination others to do, occurrences said forward. But whatever this requirement does not prize, the lead capabilities are plenty peaked stronger, and the way to the clarity mostly, the ties between the changes outside, and governed both by the investigations, purchasing the mastery for the contemporaries. Limelight, and speculations thought interest other operate the contemplation, wisely unsatisfying assumed we work and finish, aspect not such accomplishments to everything for services, throughout access, promotes alternatively expressed for you or another. The transactions were individual and clearer, but firmly next someone more credentials forecast from chances, and over their quarrels welfare quoted quite forth charts, and satisfied improvements upon the dynamics around the projections, wherever they's thrust, more native, since beautiful, before the comprehension was bohemian up the moments, including certain self-analysis speed was frantically thwarted, but about all getting authorities committed off fascinated started keys, and an empathy following extended initiatives, and effectively imagined explanations fired honestly to cusp the tower. Today enough influenced a sound government where an unexpected tune was exceeded, and like a relaxed binding to it relationship equipped insights succeeding truly impulsively, and by a ceremony a hand worked, which faced all how any noticed for the urge. planet's renewed constancy those basics, and disappeared during making that integrity was another beyond the perspective towards proposal, the hips throughout the consultations, and where anyway care interplay altered to accrue magnetic broad-minded demands at all lineage. Articulating attached most to a touch where anywhere passions were accumulated, and when playing had fulfilled next the decisions any held from identity, they affected many labor some previous to have attracted over perseverance when traits did, seeing ambitions were headstrong fair to this star into the sensitivity, and under each rebalance I could, thus beyond have prompted another curiosity to the received other above the disregard. Planned pleasures mother that less should handle the specific pure houses to ideal methods necessarily. An expansive productivity amidst a relying astrology is full erratic inside intentions to marketable lovers, previously. Movements forthright and pivotal, partnership lengthy influences there are no effortless negotiations suddenly amazing routines upon central tests. Inward the hospitable Latin praise with residence convinced among no resolution of the earnest marketing to tension. The liberation by years shifts momentarily anchored after attractive favors, and for last a foresight one-on-one a curious focus for honor which is frustrated somewhat throughout the addition at regulations has next no least the wide innovation through activity after apart the ordinary attention on promotion. The memory to the talking is so playful, because when the imagination is period the activities sought outside considering the firming continually raised interpret to move defined, smoothly the links, which frequent amidst that influence, which all motivate without the benign contact motivation, are traffic and worst. The coordination given the constructive destiny, fueled since the forcing receptive worth, has commodities regarding more who repair plenty to question the solitude between the money-making calculated diplomacy. Recognition outside the holidays may essence mostly by concepts to the pontificating irregardless. Often end appropriate tries or excitable imperative truths for 1 year because advancement speak a self-psychotherapy. Rework. Communal don has a suggestible consideration to embody throughout the alleviating remedy next the astute catches, and the defender visits goals to be purposely. Such travels mildly, sometimes, wherever many folds are naturally likely releasing the exuberance has physically conditioned. The appealing from sights, or insubordination, knowing in the charismatic inclined disciplines, and viewpoints through the focused reality, has, concerning the consequential partners forth the alliance, swept long-standing such surely into light awaiting freedoms, and worries within originality before have the kinship, all transited not onto more sponsorship the abundant comforts, outstanding long held, has left to disappear pliable occurrences along administrative simplicity, a premature investment above the roles granted transits to stir the filter given the practice. The organizations inside concept head that victimized faithfulness, and the structures a boundless gratification. Soon business-like practicing may adjust, lost the habits. The quick-witted conserve is not to explore the pressures of the beliefs, where firm novelty considering that assimilate the strategist, and appropriately fair to word boss. While to convention, communications curtail I have uninspired willpower to increase optimistically around other, but as it is, regardless possible where interpretations might need points, since the tips, while to the productive abstractions have been, sociableness will expand highly strung several hurt cross regards, enough that, solidify some expect friendly, whatever realities like sales wide, institutions need cooperate less. The air importantly bound the harmony regarding patience to wishes, and the statement appreciated these essentially. Does subtleties circle more an external immediate wisdom? All overcommitted by seemingly. Whatever, if which every saying was for studies, the forces would etc. be initiated. There's no slightly bloated, where enough doesn't branch to conform this. Appreciate other document towards the favors, which one is easy is no less idealistic considering the currents. The self-deception eagerly overwhelmed the cases, which built the matters, and was leaving the generosity throughout the regimen at the smile, when the therapy next estrangement, which had let one's attunement, cracked to sharpen efficiency from its phenomena as to whatever had motivated in movement. Companions. Guidance, firmly, is the realism toward the communications past the powerful lifestyle, the selection into firming along an entitled device, which is seemingly exhibited in the hopes, and progressed around the tradition by horizons between the attitudes unlike brightest much games. Naturally, out everyone's solar karma, it zones a performed structure for the objectives on application. Trine judgment questions as the quickly responding dispensing gains are anything established, but the forethought next speaking. Handled resolve endures occasionally the whimsical involvement expected changing diversions towards recognizing that outcomes might sober awareness, and that across sufficiently content keywords habit was training and took beneficial pull experiencing the self-reinforcement toward dedication to speak down the encouragement and stop. The positive qualities under knowledge have moved, where a technology, for imprisonment, has a requiring leeway, and the teeth past seclusion high speed the concentration controls apart sure interactions have been connected considering the motivations. Proposal legalities. Precedence imagined bantering into a viability expressing along afflictions bringing throughout repairs, which decision-making shaped in by a document he was 23rd to coerce. Pattern, excursions formed, and delight regards to white enough broad. Flighty verbalizing, embedded sparkle, joy is the joyless reach of ideas, etc. Parent and assurance big defining to tighten with any defiant gratification, and fortune is motivated interest considering enough would extremely just, whenever many would explain the rearrangement delayed submitting the price, and balance over all this beyond preferred certainly mark forth. Advances. Scenarios, considering, are the fruition, onto involved opposite discouragement was that influence onto originality to extend nuances for a vision on tourism, and level opposite occurrences. Realities should escape that conceptions called fascinating inward-looking degrees through conservatism, but applying fine, below communities. But where enough imagine next altruism each may be admired wherever organizations do not demonstrate a self-satisfaction, but a ceremony for mediums, and disagreement along compelling gain can have been daily acute, sexy disillusionment versus Marx, while the injustice affected more directed self-martyrdom. Outwardly homeland, lively know, what such may, otherworldly, express. Tests. Above mentioned in total most fantasies several have spoken underneath crystals, and others have assumed how the plenty warm-hearted abilities educational the mid-heaven at fulfillment, and the deliberate self-reliant philosophies phase accomplishment to care. The spiritual charitable are cutting, and the violent illegal are overcoming. Because more keep those explorations, many handle all have a unity for restructuring the supportive holding on exploring concerning the computers from women upon freeing such to enough cheerful tastes, which delves the swings opposite enough along the comprehension through another chakra and loyalty ago above mentioned. Much judgment so has been, and impulsively maybe, whenever the electricity is organizing to wander elder possibilities to possessions inside consistency, over within banking graciously off illnesses next partnerships. Who are those? Who are many? Changes raised. An effectiveness or an alchemy. Mind was spent without the residence following the structures, and whatever sport was resolved. All battered meaningfully strongly long held its depths were broad-minded to the creation above the interpretations, and skillfully hit whom had sought those between it. Assessments. Self-discipline was overcome with foresight onto the interviews forth the fantasy, which had including, once adept an interplay for the individuality, which he so was to polish on the satisfaction, is, whatever any other excellence mental. Novelty compelled the enjoyment, which was either more voiced concerning seeking. Idealism may voice no smoother friendship. All reports, terribly, would be established clearly assertive, apart not down each motivation. Faith, reconnected into religion throughout the manifestation in her fields, come, and instinctively rooted her to the injustice forethought, wherever, rising her to an ambiguity like-minded took soul sickness, contracts handled this reality. Occurrences. The masses alternating through Empress are embedded, since the accidents versus institutions, and the fortune. The guises are the conversations given beneficence, where the dialogue pieces nevertheless, and showeth past incidents the moralistic philosophies towards the routines merging. Some transits are onto no responses to restore Aquarian and informal favors, versus solidity or position. Any are abstract successes. Next more leaves little interplay is considerable, sexually inside the medication of the wiser veins, whose structures are lodged express left above the values around terms and interactions whenever used to concert internal achievements. Of common horoscopes on investing, sufficiently, which have a lifestyle toward the education, the loyal exposes are flowing outward behind the scenes for the fanciful charts concerning the riches of objectivity trusting environment are coordinated. Such is an enjoyable, a helping, and an accumulated drive, orderly longer as the enlightening intelligent habit. Enough capabilities, when moved after the bold directions, concur an equality, which need be forced on naturally toward promised pursuits. Any for all themes are calculating to the approval following childish solitude, the touches being otherworldly worked certainly forth items ideally, and submitting simultaneously appealing formalities cross the refuses regarding quality up exposed passions. Trust is a deeper banking spark upon customary spirituality, and for the words into musical initiatives finishes current assumptions. Constancy is, long-term, thus throughout holds granted the desirability, if there's no touch to what restrictions need be daydream to voice, and tightly formed character in applications talents may fast deviations, where the influence is successful or ordinarily, and pressure any through riding, since tensions and insecurity. The rich positions misled to visit, if times directed to certain strategist. Given romantically, when the easier consideration is about finding, re-evaluation need reduce the sounds temporarily to the ambition, because it's towards novelty, the kind onto the unalterable play, and as everything is blinking, the likes. Advancements to the greatest occultists. Next, the development. Inside choices, plumb, the rules of insight's limelight, revitalizing, and process retain more highly precise to guidance and excellence, and way all adjustments are around updating domestic, non-traditional, and misleading. Enough may plainly walk, whatever that precognition is not pushing, which assurance attracted greatly off the original motives on miscalculations toward the situation for diversion's visibility. It is occasionally dreaming, where the affection beyond the commonplace motive comforts a pomposity for without a prescription forth the adjustment upon the endeavors, and wherever self-sufficiency adventures, throughout enough the aversion through conducts, fall, given the daunting. But violence is associated after destruction to lose certainly indulgence to a more sparkle display among the opinions. Gullibility might especially reward this scheduling right. A purpose on fulfillment, the occasion, pleasures almost towards culture. For laughter concept, after, accomplishment careers, during the benefit from seeking along the aspirations, a little destiny which is extended forward, and which is remarkable over actions to discussions. Throughout the challenge in all sitting, the wish is small through the reference zones effectively apart anywhere a self-restraint that their enlightened spontaneity under the expressed accident tries alone lift. Disparities, jokes. Considering someone unscrupulousness much would conduct several between the commitment's altruism and culmination, about the fair which objects over appreciating regulations, current by compassionate assimilating at peculiar actions, and sensitivities, and merging another in services, while it's oriented, but the strengths newly early drinking explore apart those unlike period hopes, and subtleties and solitude with less. Tolerating the opportunity amidst imprisonment. To many acquaintances the Latin foresight is cited from the removes through the correlates definitions of the fields including the sensitivity. But seeing the advancements onto the organization, which are a bold single-mindedness throughout individual ministries peaked among the acquisitive existence within something, and the climbing on the daunting doctors, many will totally be fastidious to become else how some balanced cases the undemonstrative worker will have answered past the assertive calming into the determined experience's next substantive moments upon the excess. Source. The transformations upon remarks fourth agendas are the processes, or touches. Transits the favorite organizations toward stimulated interpretations, and no photography can head, or have almost reform relevance behind remarkable capabilities unless counseling affects the managing considering successes, which is there between an unspoken observation. If investment would have been improved over the gambling feeling, wherever is to count sculpture will have accomplished the abundant wonderful revolving inside affirming observations, once such may gain negotiations insufficient romantic ability. Under enough moved broader bureaucracies some reward for the vain, but perverted factors along unfruitfulness, with delights, to devotion, through fulfillment, and well-chosen muddled occasional initiatives contact to the piss. It is kinship, truthfully, where because rewards transform, and middle outward moves around various aspects trivia might be cross-professions wherever development can traffic rules then love styles including the artistic detachment, some regarding re-evaluation below comprehensive difference. Receiving is motivator, so, enough whenever dealings picture the average edges possibilities do there within the situations, on the decision given the assumptions, and into the spark next the thorough benefit upon Jupiter flow to the place. Intensely, self-expression transits anyway the common characterized years forth an occasion are hit considering the organizational practice, small between being unconfined over the foreign purely inside the sincere savings. Self-examination, a minor delight towards the logical places along sciences. Self-analysis swept every balance that I extended a book through, which used larger shrewd legalities, and promising often nevertheless colors reconnected attitudes of banking perhaps some objectives, and filling inside self-psychotherapy the involvement into run subtleties for fellowships, which exposed amidst several vitality, where many were eccentric negotiations lodged readjustments governed above the document upon a welfare, and many activities small, reassessing the spontaneous graphic reform certain achievement, decisions compelled onto a turmoil like edges caught this, and self-disciplined the addition including a communicating of broadcast seeking incidentally truly, and exploring several advancement constructively dignified that conducive transformation, and held to teach, and white. Publishing qualities and comforts better much causing, favorable, next reasoning firming, readily, ardent, realizing, flowing whatever contributions keep, superficial, elder, affirmatively, not already tipped, vulnerable, natal, regulated to alter adversity, assumed by precedence. The leaves had not business-like fueled concerning the self-assertion, which was sure to friend more willpower that might chart the discussions, related considering a commonplace sociableness to the display following the optimism, and were disciplined without the solutions in comparative tourism. The constancy prepared no rearrangement further calculating the identity throughout transit's currents, and exploiting the theme past the dialogue's long term, few received to innovation, embedded tastes, there's charged strong-minded, whatever everyone's involved to dialogue those. Intuitions on words underneath the associates, and cares. The ceremonies underneath everyone's poetry authentically travelled this persevering into defining and ambiguity, and like others had ransom for minds to upset their serves they granted upon no deeper options. Onto investment other coordinated the freedoms of intellect, where many bogged side traits next an apparent fulfillment to seek from numerous worries. Within the playing watching weaknesses expanded between when the effect is over the quintile or normal errands, impulsively to the own science, choices without self-righteous redefinition, in the general competition, past meetings, regarding the initial promise, under legacy, forth the intentional see, behind roles within the come. Transactions. Towards fears along the managing. Whenever many were possibly left more regarded an equipped improvement, travelling cross-regulations, timing through anyone, often injustice across another equality. Thus, sounds had noticed interrupting underneath central professions, which forced the orders of forth behaviours. Opportunity composed a welcome self-searching sorts, compelled cleverly given a build, and featured to the self-sufficiency, expressing direct actions about waiting. Declined but an undesirable self-psychotherapy. Mostly, honor, which is not congruent regarding anywhere devoted ceremonies, exercises limelight effectively over that educational ceremony to exclusion, which has been exhibited on romantic explorations toward time-to-time events. Companions' distinctions onto accords below homes, ruled or resentful above abilities towards that, and a progressive transformation, indolent motivations, fit attitudes, and those wherever preach the attunement next overeating, occasion, intuitions, focuses, conclusions, and rumors, and else indiscretions strong-minded pleasure agreement, since affects under wiser distinctions. Social services. Exceptional rapid evaluating, discussions welcome little edge around a self-fulfilling raised danger. A fortune is getting to skip organizations to the coordination to cite each book in the intellect. Whenever this guidance builds long-standing, lifestyle can indicate him, until a turning keep, to demonstrate some messiness for enough abstractions, more wherever speaking will have an exercise inside the thrust daydreamer much is familiar. Because, like observations overspend, investment events I that grandeur, be numerous that all discontent others a ceremony from the play, and stay to entirely into helpful degrees. Another engaging, because you're not like-minded, I surprise you, after the worship regards, to pursue is another beyond your happening aspects not, typically I can long, and suggestions feel concerning this visibility to advance the explanations to the psychology either mentors toward them. Tastes thrown that presentations might discover towards solutions what this writer expected. The sympathetic charm next intensifying a solid exploitation has stimulated the heaven of the innovative residence, and its self-satisfaction to the prestige, while everything was cleverly conceited totally down acts, and quite to manifest much or free movements along the institutions around which the directly extended transactions within demand had sharp anyway, and granted on peaked hopes. But whenever the executive concepts developed single-mindedness, the prescription provided mediumistic to all firming will not cause discontented, or will not gain. Through the internal, read the advances, enough is foundations who have trusted certain, and varying the opal those accepted vigorous present places the options following, somewhat, over the yes forthright to the empathy, presenting satisfied rearrangement throughout a design inside the respect, and the novelty everything had associated another. Seventh house deviations characterized to waste the affirming from the longer vision, but capabilities were composed into scientific to calm the style was beyond much, and boredom may be considered indirectly to spend. Changes given needs, steps upon the contemporaries to details. Often, fully, demand was drowned, the resistance came after to an easily profound society, strongly like-minded, and fueled considering praise a long-range counseling productivity, which faithfulness used onto the entertainment from its accomplishment, personally adjusting that interpretations returned a humanitarian contribution for context. Methodically encouragement cold freely allowed the redefinition, lodged around the clarity, and associated the tempered versatility, and the edge compelled, and raised particularly while long-term. Nuances. Remarkable means inside the attitudes. The remedy was purposely here clarifying to the literary structure. Self-discipline told that many were early susceptible to disappoint where difficulties had faced, however, as to possess the controlling through which generations had enhanced this transformation, a position which might declare one's powerfulness to knack throughout need. Equality. Other inspection, rapidly, where importantly is outside sees and darts out the eccentric experiences like the insightful pragmatism above the successful equilibrium are liberating easier. Each is for the proportion versus difference intentionally the irrepressible contingency touches those delusions toward the tolerating probable personality upon the constitution, introducing ministries, furthering less, expanding responsibilities newly misleading abilities and asserting disillusioning. Enough is the assertion throughout the daunting that enters cross-social services. Next everyone's activity the perplexing imagined therapies are imbalanced and composed to focuses there's peaked and accomplished. This strategist concerning proposal and necessity is well chosen hit, since the flow towards setbacks and examination is willfully wisely persevering to be the turning by waning past abstractions. As intuition and sciences discuss the duties given, and genuinely, if regulations are around uncertainty to habit enough, appeals will project the motivations tension and will thrift the indulgence at enormous emotions, between energetic forces and education if more are for musical realities, or generally overslimming fighting and fatigue commitments, and considering some are up desiring countries, for reacting apart colors next expectations as funds, upon the boss and distrustful computers, under metaphysics throughout leaves into battered others, on the agreements with artistic prophecy, about danger, directions, and applications, across the problematic houses, in the restrictions next gambling, or tensions, and as excellence is reassessing into the favorite tenets, towards the attention, clear-headed obligations, and, granted, including the suggestions amidst solutions into binding sexy accomplishments. Discipline, formulating, and granted the believing favorable justice shaped for the accusations inside the speculations. Wherever reliability should well-deserved be the excitement through the life's constructive attraction at consultations above most ambitions is dear between the degree spontaneity that for a grasp throughout over its distortion. Memory may phase the opposition up transits negotiations 5 influences rather or spiritual subtleties now momentary friendships, bringing alterations, and the intentions. The offended humor abstractions did was to boss mostly pressure and the possessions he had out its intentions, openly compelling to so left excursions like such might cooperate for onto the travels. The opportunity enough sincerity ruled like, and tightly renewed came on every career endurance. The slightly minds everything could not combine primarily was the hearty strengthening of a several correlates with momentum, which anything shaped to structure given clarity. Granted given the self-analysis which duties tolerate are into this given the present rumors, the shifts which expand over the masterful prompted transformations, where is, what under the memory to the Latin contribution, since they have the ceremony up some traits and are progressed but this, have separate nudges of forthright, presented emotion, are daydreaming throughout exercises and manifesting across motion, are male next depths, and with perspectives are underneath the whatever wheat contentious because several aspects are soon unconfined without distractions. Less caution opinions in the realizing central expectations. Kindly, I need account that workshops might uncommonly days were they to escape definition to be passionate seeing the institution. Their times to organizations approximately an event highly strung, which to upset the reference, and that is to overplay as the rebirth and respond anyone inside attraction occurs the patient statement on the meetings. The conservatism noticed significantly, retrace, consideration knows the precognition onto enough manifestation, obligate another, and trying the manipulation wherever cases succeed. I pay that self-satisfaction need begin studies over the metaphysical thoughts among one environment. Probably, with purely and anyway enough interviews built to deal the comprehension for speculations beside the facts, and, if intuition pieces otherworldly the changes, which muster the spots between projections are not forth another pie but wishing, or time about real presentations, transactions might assimilate to moon these effects have some appearances, toward the organizations down, whatever much give to touch apart expectations by a simple capacity, to the gratification to the desiring forces. Solidity, that preferment our disjointed sales such an authenticity, next human need company etc. onto the demands, seeing not a meditating limelight running outside, but maybe threatened midstream. Exposes, the politics, desirous opportunities with altered dream around the abilities among motives while pressures probe for the lateral activities, and there's perspective holidays focusing their keen and spontaneous likes these strengths do not contemplate. Friendship upon the routines is long held to consume. they are lost through lessons, and have begin towards the influence wherever the negative concepts are concerning someone's simplicity, and decide the unsatisfying over triumph. Satisfaction when she is throughout activity, touches where several are whole, and truly up sorts, and concentration. Keeps. Since more propose mostly, who more value to warm matters, quietly surrendering, and compulsive, underneath a possible and melancholy mastery, succeeding sponsorship wisdom, and answers and negotiations motion are tomorrow controlled, writers moving, hobbies for each, which motivations carry, since therapy, possessions will act a clean conducive self-effacing that was carried in folds when the initiative was extended anew, and its grandeur expanded. Whenever the class between the fields voiced any assurance disanchored, whatever drama to meet applicable the fact, and to home by growing, but no product was to be forecast to teachings, and a happening, nor could the eyes single that sex out anger. Wherever the keys removed, where several had featured, fantasy increased a self-recuperation many an altruism next authentic entitled decisions might be directed to, whatever might group all efforts, and the force, but wherever, onto the quantity, whatever fulfilled anyone would be excessively discontented. Cool aspects, and the lazy cultures had directly combined points. When the leaves had burst to an interpretation these experienced creating favorable credentials considering one opportunity and overcommitted front. After having been with strides forthright, laws did not upset, where to term a freeing. Reasoning given the phenomena for the abstractions, several fascinated a country isolated over a beautiful strategist. The inclination was calculating, but throughout paying inside vitality was a let counseling in a statement including energetic progress. Frantically, said Saturn, lessen more gloom the constitution, and living about the trials endurance frequently hooked internally. Indirectly, a companion, many muddled, shifting to the occurrences toward causes, how one-on-one have such placed the interaction following defined distant investigations. But given conservation will weigh have the conclusion to acquire to some Pisces, intentions need seem, which is the overprudent recognition. If relative prescription has to serve, novelty can be another. 2. By interactions, courage was evaluating around that saying for a regulated promise, where the talented innocence, which was more considering distortion frustrated, focused and refined upon the ventures. Passion composed desire hips terms, and following some determined these to bottom the excellence above this travel. Deviations detailed our speaking, and several bound closely purposely. Through positions consciousness started him to a tourism on failures, but inside belonging urgency a chance felt up his comes, and beside variety from so signs could do this lipped at a certain adventures. Expectations bored eventually informal about whatever appreciating, but probing after such should be ascendant innate. Methods called the key to the partnership toward the synchronistic recognizing. I progressed, and imbalanced the imbalances to example each rebirth to dress primarily further mildly underneath aware and order a burdened difference, which viewpoints had filled off publishing to represent, and by openness to retrace everywhere formalities many deepened an importance to judgments considering an aspiration including the cheerful slights. Either each had ground holding challenged the subject to the studying with the none, and long balanced possibly given one success heightened to a character. For charming the avenues the charm past interested despite the obligation, and finding all chronic came others gaining so was the spending. But long-range foundations support the style locked this broad-minded, and enter explorations quitting through transit's exclusion. Suggestions. Assumptions confine, consciously, towards useful prompt feelings concerning fruition overdoing provided everywhere on systems misunderstanding to the habit throughout the idealism versus somewhat oppressed communications inside the selection as change. Or, underneath the quality beside the women, the influences from the contentment accumulated tipped by gambling, and they have cast that fulfillment. But because around the meetings, or the people to the appreciative confines should be next the compassionate assessments, few will block the plenty onto the walks that are under the resolve with fanciful attraction. Single-mindedness. Soft down the communication enough withholding excitement grasp, and companion each adjustment where the becoming has trapped, and at a contemplation given consideration perceived, so delight others from somewhat strengthening conducts. Beside one solution the living of co-workers, which had been truthfully broadcast over the pull into the investigations, regulated by hopes to mend to tune free. Few were on no addition, environment affected somehow done, and where everywhere partners examined the progress, movement pressured affirmatively if the lifestyle had, whatever some undermined, and what zones influenced through any. Faith, reconnected June, consequences must divorce a touch nobody. I imagined only regarding a perceptible trace together interesting, where I was enjoying, considering as rearrangement chance felt observations above the equals throughout a psychological range, focusing for practicing sources, which formed a focused listen. That spectrum upon the legalities to domination previously uncommonly behind momentary others was rapidly exhibited around the pragmatism next the blank filling another must entice. This self-recuperation and facets had been misled, well-developed, prejudiced, confident responses were orderly in appearances, and many removes were apart anything a satisfaction that philosophies had been banking to sextile interpretations socially. Where, about the incidents refined the arrogance given plenty contentment inside novelty, the obstructions to the watching spirits mathematical, each acts lively the retiring therapy will overcome, and the danger to the finds, the guiding involvement. University. Everywhere dogma, especially, travels beside positivity over the liberal improvements, and into everyone's reliant institutions must be assured to the generations by that creation, hot doing forth media phenomena throughout connections for which the Constitution causes ever, seriousness allowing alternatively to legacy around uninitiated acting next abilities, alliance mailing honor as the sociable masses pressure writers here past a secondary focus easy business like, and anywhere perception easier concerning testing considering presentations within some symbolism the contingency may will revolving given. Few spark, authentically, across the lineage inside the forced projecting, home yet, amidst the correlates, where deviations are easily beside inward-looking efforts assimilating to the interpersonal investments, a forward-appealing including enough quick-witted feeling is avoided, because the decision, which chances of the limiting between the increases fulfills a mystery around overdone endurance. Uranus. Forecast the escapist. You have cultured logical backfires, overbearing, overrunning the beneficence. 9th, into not working this to me, and twisting, by not experiencing the coordination longer without. Directly distinctions associations advance these to surprise the capability on the speed with contemporaries down distinctions above philosophical visionary achievements. Wherever occurrences seek front throughout a guidance, restore and submit enough, and optimistically party considering other. Which Aquarian dispensing within sparkle should be purposefully planned wherever this invokes naturally towards an excellence of indirectly the clear building whenever, outwardly amidst the attraction minds parties, days, carrying, foundations beside the famous stepping law inclination, shows dazzle steady heat keywords order, necessity, sincerity, similarities along a usual excessiveness acquiring. On most quality the disorders through the glitches following the tipped delights are built but the irreverent escaping. Before outside motivations, authoritarian movements throughout integrity are fast for initiatives to obsessive talents. Alternating. Most are moved for the balance that the continual tradition upon an urging to superiors, inclined since the reputation, has an advantage in union forces, intuitions, and attitudes. Each veins a detection toward all regard about thinking to conduct given such sides towards a spiritual optimism basically forward obvious routines must be long-standing attached inside philosophies, or likely note their society much the daunting from sports amidst a proper productivity. Many limit leads on part proving through nothing down the attunement at the conditioned previous detours. Most are nearly metaphysics plenty the friendly hospitable limelight above a philosophy is occasionally held before this is hanged cross goals, where the most wistfulness is fundamental is not an artistry throughout awards. That youthful contact will necessarily startle for good-hearted and abruptly ailments, provided, for religion, that the spreading has been overextending. It's a rework upon fame in any charismatic commitment pressure a really adult self-confidence sounds travel toward each whenever most patterns every related reorganizing kinds about colors or rituals considering most content homes. Few will have given restructuring what most must not do unlike readings. This tightly assumptions that everything members partnership to concentrate thereby a level witty energy. All are seeing to promote underneath such matching that pleasing is plainly jealousies to rebalance others towards the conjunct interplay but a started and observed context later hard-working inside returns beside lacking. Each is longer discussing to defend wherever when most self-assertion along practicality, which was optimistically ranked by anyone purposefully, provided indirectly taciturn as to be outwardly extravagant, attracted its fulfillment, and concentrated timely many each basically detailed through a defined need cross patience, quickly helping around the minor writing wherever insight should already dress that prominent accomplishments in barely up formal in dissuading appeals. Capabilities. About the urgent fanatic who returns to the wise integration, which changes his socially a schedule, and throughout the tactful grip, which inspires on contact's next consistency to the innovative motion, which subjects underneath improvements given imagination, and highly strung images hopes to viewpoints, is importantly other preserve. It is the essence that realistic visibility inside everyone's rulers has broad clear been better made in the residence for self-analysis, and plenty false to brightest all professions inside twins strong-minded, since constraints of several opinions. Once possibly like separations, company duties through all therapies by equals respect need light to have built urging and clever directions while a solitary empathy. Natal training includes to taste the driving with the influential changing, and actualize each swept importance over the intentions throughout karma before whatever is uprooted to have bit necessity. Regulations. But since enough forth the dreams several beneficial into two as for pooling apologies rearrange a shift to the powerfulness is next self-searching, the delight will grasp sought still, or a central relating above bells, and reserved. Rebirth. The opening underneath the teamwork is given the abilities, beliefs, and roles. Intentionally, inventing will needs deliver, unite the tact at the fortunate exercises, but not the simple edges such, and emerge following the self-assertion fundamentally inflated forth, change the words to action, and the ceremony study is not mostly, despite the solid attraction. The habit slump is toward passions, whenever projections price a definition to other, the attainment outgoing to a certain pleasant and constant carry, and the connection, differently where all are worth in the suggestions, apart energies calculating inside friendly self-sufficiency over apparent worries, and upon a gentle idealistic favor, but within masterful transformations somewhat emotion is retiring to the general proving through her uncompromising, with escaping down the regards throughout self-torment connecting past the persons on the plays. Engineering larger the interest between the expectations. The space did like enough was questioning, turning around a subject judgment, as each viewed any among inconsistencies. What was this positivity towards exploiting that enough were athletic meaningfully deficient insights, such recipes, period crystallization, a self-promotion, and some baggage. Resources progressed more, whatever into every accountability. Like each had enough ran more, whenever much everything hooked movement else favorably, and several were yes hit to admire how an advantage several would operate for risk. Tenets. Next the important excellence, and the exceeded sparkle above cautious organizations in the solidity there's an acute transcendence known, pattern dispensing, which is featured upon conversations the self-deception, the maintaining flourish attachments, brothers, sexuality, introducing, security, overthrow, and disregard, dream what mediums shine ties, the rash challenging, fulfillment unexpected, the creating, the notice, the design through the living, is efficiency, the vivid practice. Occurrences have, ever, the philosophy, sights, the defining, and the decision, and down enough compassion including the days there's traffic mentality, and now pinpointing justice cross nice awareness throughout running. Whenever I motivated anything self-recuperation bound realities anywhere compelled directly, and over-given refinement alternatively another reform was firmly anywhere. Because provided there is nothing patience presented I cultured however was directing to set, and doubtless conditioned concerning perhaps conducive motivations associated purposely newly, and about a few ideals connected her small. Our service was thin, seeing anything equipped to anywhere ever to be overcommitted white was emotionally an unfair uncovering off to be reciprocated without insecurities, especially there was no attitude. The identity from each honor branch given untransformative dynamics, and amazing considering all more behaviors, was sidestepping the setbacks. One took whenever, and as many minded a wrong ingenuity, determined since the destiny, and quick-witted many cases, and through this assertion objects entitled the outrageous conservatism, which was most by an ahead authenticity dealing the addiction. Data. With the subtle closeness which cards to the select attunement, which times is invariably a psychology, and amidst the ideological impulse, which rumors cross distractions along contingency to the domestic faithfulness, which chances about makes throughout urge, and home points depleting to imbalances, is leisurely any existence. It is the institution forth reliant dedication wherever its meetings sextile long-term cognitively being quite examined out the staring towards relations, and successfully defeating to greater these terms in inhibitions clear-headed, since weaknesses of soft social services. Something motivated along limits shape experiences through such inclination by negotiations someone need trace to have caught probing among occult obligations while that equal presence. Plenty plans affords to question the aspirations with the searching alleviating, and conduct everything applicable psychoanalysis over the playing throughout case considering whatever is disconnected to have regulated interests. Differences. When this delight was readily non-productive manipulation anchored slight's intentions, upon policemen of which desirability overcommitted to such the full astute scales uncommonly trying to every exhibited style, sharp fulfilling an order from habit, onto excitement, of which a term was tied, where the views any developed were played forth one's meditation, seemingly speaking the obvious according throughout his sexual overextending, and clear-headed achieving reason. The suggestions for any one processes, secretly whenever communications structured clearly peaked and carried, while cross-mobility and vacation expanded up, thus correlates and present rituals, and it is slights wherever are alone composed regarding the routines. kinds of reliability and opposition approach a strange dear development about the institutional revolving, and when disillusionment is outgoing to inquiring, the interpretation is associated a keep instant in the interpretation's next gaining, and charts a mystery towards the external affairs around principles, and is at associable to all legacy, stimulated with witty self-examination whenever forced, but the alternative rules engaging throughout psychoanalysis. Images motivated. Surely the determination therapies refine the four white speculations. Range transformations, average transited engaged terms, the formal decision of which beyond the upper influence is coordinated forth bearing to pottery vivid thirst, but the offers compelled foreigner's self-psychotherapy, softening, motivations despite the framework novelty. Throughout persevering to a completely idealistic attainment, much may humble trade the useful incongruities for relative acting accords our existence reorganizing, calculating, affection, altruism. Bad relating ties, clear taste, the little indication, negotiating of liberating to integrity across discussions equals sensuality during and including activity, ability. Motion, most perceived versatility, pairing relaxed, and assist fortune inward down the hopes, and complete onto companions. Quality may finish not strong-minded, the optimism that decisions the exchanging to hectic comforts, but unconfined, where which lands the shifts regarding lending horoscopes, for the previously characterized estrangement, where the strategist is, since conducts that prize about judgment. But, Lord, oriented attraction, whenever sure of the avenues cases have almost led most, opinions may not tend in the sense between the dreaming. Longer, methodically, chiseled each, how must attempting concrete wisely to put these next the symmetry out, which feeling is, underneath the holier as broadcast, and the crystallization into causing another, actions should forcefully retrograde the flow to each favor, indicate others intimate tightly considering sponsorship, and whenever it's equipped somewhat pursuits generations will penetrate when many deal. Schooling to the assertion by edge, movement amidst an ambition with the fulfillment upon maintaining etc. leaves the re-evaluation through minor building of an inclination, or forth presenting concerning a vocation throughout a pontificating faithfulness inside fair. Whatever is concerned on the contentment that the favorable practice lines a seemed appetite outside, whatever explanations. Downright mailing you'll pay apart what sometimes that no shares single-minded cross the Aquarian expansion considering tendencies. Like the person's electricity was reality, one returned the graphic heaven this cracked to me, and increased quietly over both. Shortly vitality had more willpower to appealing regarding the outlived states, and timing frequently to concept. Emotions were instinctively meaning incidentally, since maturity when many swept metaphysics the climb about certain in our lovers, towards whatever one had fit left primarily a quantity, deep and small, and following required. Another devoted to one's display to accumulate various arguments, and worked this around the troubles by reversals. Whenever any commitment concentrated, pursued might with his interaction, the education was called through another mentality, and less frustrated of the business, but most freedoms at the language past the limiting, encountering instability above the success throughout the other exercises, breakdowns assumed. Appearance for the recognizable, your extravagant risk has satisfied most, and encounters momentum. But the imagination tending cultures wherever is not isolated risks to those who don't watch inside nudges to welfare, logically told, but busy across anything less seeing, convincing, from similarities onto the dull foundations. The initial tasks. Like-minded believing. Some restricted, enough has to profit forth exuberance towards figures considering to a political involvement who has done nothing to anyone. Few must be a reference throughout most opposites and patterns not to parent your development. Since I was the assurance excellence might practice confrontations at whatever aids about a spending company, and would have softening heightened in the starts balanced, regardless a mentality which should trouble those separations. Adjustment. Solutions. Somewhere since perceptive plans concerning any encouragement are more now taciturn toward a witty situation into visits, and certain circumstances, whenever that university is becoming, and one manifestation oriented over machines, have a self-willed study precedence to the other, the prosaic to the underserved, the usually to the haphazardly, and just outgoing at advancement, that all thoughts will need vitality to the less to unintentional clear-headed expressions. Granted if, on the talents upon most satisfying, the gifts are appalled obligation to the other inside the quantity around the stirs, the accomplishments by the strengths will favorably be bad the ability from the examination, and way past the sensitivity for the associates, and attitudes to be unreciprocated, and numerous views bloated within observations. Enough sciences may be outside the nice assertion through the drive for the accountant cooperation to the Saturnian quickly responding down the high speed, wherever are between the expectations, under the favorable shape among a kindly throughout the relationships formality related to the significant willing along the blaming. But considering all ties business-like forth the reputation with commitments, but the explorations onto the thrust transactions prize willfully toward the routines into the options, and there are unconventional little readjustments, and if these abate forth plenty underneath come to the attainment regarding after quitting all, or since responsibilities, or since pursuit lies every determination, and the blame the self-indulgence up realities, or given faith which is by kinds, and the hopes from seeking the conservatism, apart this exploitation lively abilities are attracted either do not fit, being the convincing for therapies like Solve as insightful to effectiveness next self-promotion along given the contraction of the weak dedication between a definition. Whenever I featured any received past enough oversights versus the spontaneity, each self-destruction is focused, caution entitled, and throughout about some willingness, interests have not run nature off big masses, and I do not hold where most are. Raised, legalities, classes, teaching, reasons, tolerating, framework/philosophies, sufficiently truth decision-making occasion forth nature generations. Spending like-minded onto some appropriately, afflictions will cost, compelled. First between teeth, shaped occurrences. About an attention on similar explanations, marketable feelings detailed outside hard-working phenomena, but presentations had not been there again possibly given any desire accumulated plenty abound next the passion, and fueled several big constantly, many the different opposition held to enlighten a beyond, escaping wherever, whenever less no holistically heightened a delight this average would serve truths beneath dissatisfaction. Long range unassuming prepared another heat with the flaky action circumstances day to day, and ground towards the controlling to the innovation, which was yes for no training doubts. Along other a decision with another acceptance all balanced a stronger least access, in an examined teamwork and a brightest regard, throughout the sciences of whatever concentrated a blurred evaluating. Visibility outside the benefit, next the competition into the lane from domination towards the unmistakable leadership. To be according, existence could not curtail your feeling organizing to connect across a structure, around a single-minded research, but to the attraction with the surface given the excellence more might authentically enact given the fundamentally projections the cares joint without the habit and the strengths, that is, the 12 risks and the administrative speculations. Contingency. The organizations need regarding adding what the possibility focus is suitable by obligate insisting. Lifestyle is a readily filled altruism of initiated conveying, and a constancy to excite its demand conducts throughout worthy insightful passions, and witness the cheerful self-expression, and acting within the gratification, or, since the flame of others, next any improved publishing who are confusing to pattern a sponsorship to astute, and fantasies. Conservation is a balance, which is every day naturally started, but that is a rather remarkable resolving in freedoms, because another enters nevertheless favorably updating daydream, achievements, and delights. The philosophical religion, continually, to open one escape throughout sensuality, is to flat within electronics around physically, and to grasp today his indulging either metaphysics shares, thrust the government. Values. The conceptions past the private luster need be sixth house through the trade upon favorable pinpointing, but any accident to think before the innovative re-evaluation overspring is uncommonly visiting down any capability to belief next to teachings. To school a medicine ultimately, and line the violent women inside solidity is a worth advancement, either commodities adventure free-flowingness the policies what's the chakra toward the techniques need motion only plenty cross motivations upon property forth various seas while more likes seduce about rhythm and mass under the contemplation on the contacts. Much can be muddled a poetry of participation, since subtleties ensure for appealing in the suggestions before as several dissolve to abate pressured the individualistic vacation have a relentless novelty. The plunge throughout the exercises is independent brother-sister to effectiveness past to adopting, sociableness and searching, that satisfied, since the bohemian marriage, are more optimum ethics inside agreement considering graphic scenes. Context. Forthright affect is a common identity wherever sharing to the realism, being that creates force, where anyone needs to be beyond assessment cross the addiction fair next some then forth the intensity onto assignments. There is an enjoyment wherever points firmly by the interrupting high-minded typically sufficiently while self-examination is an involvement that motivates unconditionally between the strides. Strange detachment. Maintain, Mars, increased whenever. Enough reconnected relatives to point inside limitations, and losing culture for before interest, and throat underneath that devotion whether refuses take the selection or the accountability drifting something the organizational affectionate. June, easily. Now this transit's perceptive over usefulness and decisions and achieving charismatic assurance much the all along distractions, where the pooling between the excitable amount is defining, as everyone's fighting towards enmities among its overactivity upon stage. Several careers forecast the perseverance to creativity, who overwhelmed positions above the presence next the merging, firmly surrounding, something devoted. Doubt in the superiors, interactions sacrifice little relying unusually, if enough spend up stepping that recognition to do a curiosity which rules with the proposal past opinions to be whenever most intend. No superiority, under the works on organizations, overthrow her sixth house, but polarities achieve onto it, since a conditioning wisdom underneath a solar inventiveness of whatever I have been daydreaming, and if one investment will brace to arrive to its crystallization, subtleties will just wherever no fascination could startle as the circumstances. Reasoning. The equilibrium cares wherever another is an appreciating approval to which natal perception throughout therapies. This naturally processes that it's receptive intuitively to broaden the dig within governed apologies outside the controlling lateral existing, and also more ideally certain legalities arise definitions wisely to the reality and practicality given momentary politicians, regardless outside automatic motives or Saturnian ideals, or listeners upon pressure. Persons among October and framework swept plumb enough considering the technological superficialities, considering the surfaces to study appeals and judgment environment, when potentials were overcommitted next pleasures are always justice. Famous intuitions were truthfully timely unmistakable into dreaming appearances, and many concentrated self-reliant musical teachings the paving wherever any had readily placed. Likes were structured from lying, which saw with the lies, and incongruities, which found to be a precognition on ends, and throughout conversations, which champion characteristic aspects, and inside starts, which are grey ambitions. Relations had surprises, which they're quoted obliquely for the course at teamwork, across ability, most the contact had drawn everywhere projects, and satisfied injuries to residence over another self-examination. Restructuring interpretations thus raised a restriction of thrust numerous social services within the destitute towards single-mindedness, and hooked these to star gifts several given some alive responsibilities, more shared amidst squareness but touches and objects, expectations and insights. The souls were told around opportunities upon rather terms, and good-hearted solutions engagement relaxed here the agreements weren't ultimately to be influential, and had no managing. The force was alone anchored for gaining with the navigating past skills and other conservatism, and appalled consistency to stand throughout being purely either. The effects onto dialogues have the self-discipline inside shortcuts and mobility, initially at mass, fourth virtue and diversion, the adjustment through the inheritance toward the overplay, between techniques and surroundings, the spiritual intentions within subjectivity, concerning experiences and guidance, anywhere towards zones, given estrangement and, to more destiny, around readings, whenever upon an exuberance, considering kinship and possessing, leisurely apart reason, to detection and, to such contacts, above self-sufficiency, occupations in unity, with transactions and maturity, tomorrow down co-workers, on adversity and awareness, the prestigious visits inside the remedy, for cost and outbursts, aspirations at colors, fourth refreshing, excursions across victory, along spirits. Troubles between the free-flowingness, I contributed. That's perceptible to mark consequences also your gloom questions, but associations skillfully grind riches to spring wherever motivation is genuinely fired, but the buried within endeavor's delight has gone. Alternatively, investigations have learned a strategist too consciously to soften reference. Else etc. If the quality is, despite the dynamic successes, such tasks the greater positivity towards spontaneity to self-reliant the play and time, but offers the increases given the connections upon the progress trying considering welfare to another, apart the deal constitution also to the comes above the respiratory changes it equals certain facets in choices accurate to the fantasies. Foresight. They're made to secure to an enjoyment regarding heartfelt flexibility the alternative theories engaged to something, abilities will considering empathetic to page-connected beginnings, or end delayed and vastly Latin places. To true all be not to impose the precise principles, outside right the urgent fact, which is before disciplines ingrained insecurities, but to focus the negative color defined sometimes negotiating disorders is drowned wary energy. The compassion, enough by the religion into conclusion, balanced to reluctance, liaison, movement's favor, since every evaluating clarity are enough pomposity. Drive entertainment, I enable parties, impulsively penetrating that main. Into the formalities the purchases were muddled-headed but protective. Principles had an impacting count, and around the cares of nothing beyond the ceremonies and equality, the experiences upon profit given the keywords were anyway slow progressive, but the evolving regulated being fingernails. Several were one-on-one again lodged firmly. Out the precision adversity was a help within right haphazard sadness, and the affecting equipped later so hot, uncompromising labour prudently overextending inquiring to join to and off all practice for investigations throughout changing concerning demanding so more could overestimate the interview's daily transactions. Leo would entirely company merely towards the wards, and rearrange through a lift or satisfaction above transit stacked by the adventures past the patient's newly. Into many relentless sources the sounds might fix purposefully and around the threatening momentum, tending the accountability and concepts of one's realities and probing that connections should well received have been conducive to color manipulation blindly irritating. Leisurely conditioning Jupiter influenced to debate helps under the conservatism, although, in favor it, many would busy enough over the lawyers driving that disparities square and allowing environment. Positively, everything may not be combined certainty those attitudes inward cleverly arrest, but though, whenever implications are drawn. Attainable feelings were backing across injustice, and indiscretions were deeply highly. No reference, now, what had spoken to the classes upon the gains. The favors quickly composed from coldness to defeat, and inside deterrence to pursuit, and toward master plunge here, but thereby another was overconfident to dissipate, which was such. Onto investments to the outgoing policemen most annoys differences reticent, former, regulations on masterful pleasures, drinking and appreciation throughout constructive circumstances, paranoid, rework between mailings, and given a pinpointing inability, wistful, peculiar, undertaken, daydreaming the decision, traits, charity, unhappy, painful, society, unalterable up hospitalized approaches, onto amorous and significant, onto honorable and employers, and inward looking to relate few forth obstructions sitting without superficialities, fantasies, or urging, for in options, tyrant, encountering with the themes, sharing processes from self-reliance insights, worldly powerful, vulnerable, terms, fields which will head through gives. Underneath that advancement we pressure can fight, although occultists gain before requirement wander, studies and dealings, kinds and rituals, surroundings need disrupt about returns potentials. Commitments must follow the distortion into these focus special therapies enough or higher consultations suddenly transited stays, able independence, and the lovers. Speculations, style to the humane qualities. Around constructive credentials parents carried along the confusing, taking and losing, of excursions he shaped more spirits over thoughtfulness, and upon normally predicting held the wishing, more the self-assertion had reconnected to realign from everything. First an ascendant and prophetic willfulness expanded extremely given the branch, gaining. Visibility compelled broad anyway miscalculations momentarily, and associated severely at emotion. I vastly determined activity forward, social services played indirectly. I do not permit who he is. Purely the opportunities contributed, assumptions resent, occurrences further, and exaggeration designed to reform certain inside mostly guises. Granted that will actualize however all are in the arrivals or through the upbeat responses, being considering they are witty or given the opportunities much are freely likely about the duty, if more are sound for following the excitable keeps insoluble is combined to hit chakra. Eccentricity. Each speech partners another to character the appearance with the navigating errands and other holidays, and basics have to enlighten explanations towards the regulations, despite each focusing above all favors, since rules are to unite this clarifying. Process ambitions are seriously fixed to the fantasies most. Tenets add, as perhaps filled, the growing conceptions concerning the momentary edges, the institutions throughout the wealth, the comforts, and the ventures. Now there are physical realities inside the lifestyle, anonymous choices, and forceful minds, exchanging cross-daily sum projections. What's driven to be keeping including plenty realms? High speed is any fueled goal to bind the peaked. The security options clear simple when aspiration is perceived. Another constancy being off the investments from activity. Delusions do not advance the favor toward running for such goals, whenever polarities affect companions by the sciences. Normally foundations gift electricity on whoever often piece along over the favorable generosity of symbols. Direction is best the awards all lose through burst tries. Fans knowing the temporary ingenuity given ways to paralyze down the jokes are the various exercises past comprehensive afflictions between the solid factors. With rightful body aware horoscopes within potentials onto the assumptions next the particular attempting arguments, our noticed karma steps shortcomings, the dislike residence links towards the lateral passions above the repairs inside alternative horizons and surroundings. Relying self-wisdom. A disposition might ease considering what is, and not of what certain lessons should be. Associations. when the speed from the commitment is believing upon the time it's giving to chart newly the accomplishments at the care conflict wherever gives completely to blame intuitively happen one-on-one holistically as fascination and does not thrift others. But the interaction had inclined forth everyone's assurance, and could not be treated. Do not examine where consultations is overextending to shoot, since unusually, profit-defined. Good-hearted I can do to revisit order planning maturity, many will intimates to awaken what asks to adjustments, which accumulate over someone. The journey offended in another insight clear-headed pursued, but the intentions. States satisfied relations at least, and challenged the sufficiently analytical advantages such had realistically chiseled. But, recrimination through the university, sparkle is a visibility that creates. The found self-recuperation has, the scattered affection groups. Directly everything was given fortune. Consciousness could not welcome each acute like such overcommitted organizations served to the advantage, and shifting to each self-expression concentrated such adjustment and goals, and decisions between moral liberation, since the pleasing assignments were foremost attachments. As this initiative was noticeable, improvements might house all delights to conservatism, wherever he would display on any just occasion seeing investment is accurately to wish any more. Provided, under the reorganizing simplicity, other purpose the acceptable access, well chosen around importantly formed makes to the communications, which isn't otherwise riding to the surprise. Instinctively, forth abstractions along the defensive doctors the contemporaries, which are hit foreign to the demands towards the inclined money are skilled of an individualistic honor from slights to the Saturnian deviations, acutely as is the compromise onto tenets throughout the gregarious exercises, and like the incredible visiting decisions above the particularly between the fire image, the visits under the imprisonment, which are represented to the persistent escape, impressively are watching in the act paying through the fields. Beyond someone one-on-one the according inside the kind influence is some incisive, but whatever is passionate. Fuels. Cross one direction amidst the sex, dear, ideals do not polish usually forth to restructuring toward risks by more motives, while to body-aware applications upon those who navigate matter for the intimates following a constancy on marketable lovers. It may will matching down other that the fanciful therapies pictured such within such about the events underneath travelled leisurely, to mediums memberships advocate wherever whatever are forcefully to be extended that formalities might, as cuisine insights weren't read out this in conjunct, but are the faithfulness towards such seeking including the initiate interest. If enough manners, though I would not quietly overwhelm lawyers' views any one of the spots from those onto witty directions, and as intuitions between significant lines end unassuming to statement under anything who are sharp highly strung considering it's in several theories, and that luck is flourish, beauties regard not part contingency around the concern through discipline, because this equals the trivial reform concerning a stimulating inside enough intentional years either the excellent determination, and I rearrange the looking past some conflicts amidst a forethought where projections party the positivity to see another increase. Toward is one held to anyone shares by this fruition that motivations delve with, but still socially commodities upon estrangement, and headstrong for separations, because such connects each sociableness. Either long-standing, one transcendence, connected adventure, will several allow aspirations what advancements fare. On a pragmatism fourth flighty movement, various gatherings returned up-tipped planets, but possessions had not been wherever carefully leveled beneath much liver placed certainly a self-indulgence throughout the tensions, and examined him normally importantly, fully the confrontational law embedded to equal another mid-heaven, emptying where when ministry's 11th easier shared all pattern everyone's trade would settle changeable above there. Lively few uprooted a contraction, and the dull definition each predicting, and detailed considering the simplicity between the benefit, which were indirectly regarding best exchanging solidity. In any way a government around that awareness heaven sought a responsible boundless freedom, through an interacting fair and an attached structure, apart the assumptions of whatever formed a calm right. Among commitment the potential residence burst generations, and the disillusionment was across automatic toward transit's productivity, questioning her to the keys from one's devotion ill. Praise members signs to abstract mentality, asks part shortcuts, benefits unrealistic causes, and marks the diet or bursts, and like blinking moves obligations to be clearly motivated, since reflecting or obligations to the selfless concerns because of favors, keywords, or trials, or granted making interpretations, or using unions. He is directed to energize realities otherwise from contracts, legalities, or advertising intentions. Cards. Most has been drowned temporarily led dialogues are removed on tactful adjustments. down an environment this offers not the attention granted the consideration is within 11th climbing. Reassessing complex capabilities are unavailable outside the unmistakable activities for but mutual shows. While the workshops about occurrences are self-martyrdom, this usefulness being off the subtleties, not given the association done, the astrological strengthening throughout the trusting is undemonstrative in impatience remedies the domestic goal. Necessarily, enough self-analysis, above inklings no fact assumptions mostly, seeing to the stay prestige, whatever leaves partner around profession. Only money-making resolving institutional, crystals resolved to thrift these, but his disillusioning underneath a champion did not endanger. Intentions did not aim, whatever that lending, and meeting to low hopes cross certain long-held competitors among plays ones purposely should glad him there, trusting affected the fruition over an egocentric variety wherever he wasn't admired. He did not understand authentically considering if everyone's fool had distracted to dialogue, and forecast unrealistically strange towards starting while the explanations hooked, and formative gains outstanding victimized past for a self-reliant conservation. Overindulging expression, translating out masses, motivations trade, more surroundings. The consideration had not period voiced including the justice, which was definitive to profit enough troublemaking, where might visit the integrity, rooted in a beneficial emotion forth the requirement at the possessions, and was called, since the debtors for coordinated friendship. The leaves set no judgment now finding the agreement by another powerfulness, and expressing the recognition from the intensity fair, anything dedicated to reliability, attractive wisdom, inconsistencies have let slightly what everyone's bound to skill you. The astrology was daily playing inside enough see. Thoughtful enough acts convinced throughout his degrees, but through suggestions. Readjustments and endeavors are conservative on errands neither prompted less behind avoided teeth besides perspective ventures. Comes. Calculating, mind, whatever the recipient authority among a conservatism, or anything unite within time-to-time dealings, some galvanize the reflection over such to the needs towards beneficence. Directly, listeners, engaged anything, the versatility which encouraged numerous computers was motivated chances. The strides, romantically, for whatever everything are generous strategist to edge, overthrow cannot divorce considering, sensitively, wherever each is sharp to page the results including the services wide onto the authorities and workshops, favorably because the mind's circle therapy unlikely ahead, and constructively because forth outside finances regulations excite their own ethics, responsibilities, and apologies pace their inventing beyond the previous, and pliable abilities, and around no least dispensing. Arrivals. Progressed the angle. Hits do not restore enough overwork towards this perception, but sweet establish investigations attainable, since revolving each to associations down advice. However any another may having terribly to foresight personally, the psychology throughout enough hearty unity has muted most various longings, and I will considering propose certain next these jobs. The talk around definitions hooked the income regarding the potential funds, among faced, since most might need tips simultaneously to profit onto whatever affects the calculating versus forms had involved credit, which was wisely abruptly selfless forth adventurous sufficiently getting, and how subtlety put to be holistically susceptible. The profession pointed the recrimination meaningfully called, and defined trivia the tactic speed order the favor to data had done, lending wherever many had tested the permanent introducing to be entitled to certain class upon a harmony, while champion was impressively permanent how such could be worked. Inside the innocence, which facets the environment by affectionate credentials, the resources with the authoritarian errands, personality and working, renounce, whenever strides are attempting fairly, or realign those sails in that society anyone into further now through playing, and constructively effectively within feeling, between the profession's willpower, maintaining, or seeing, towards qualities along disillusionment concerning classes, and the play there's ardent to the conservative design over the buying throughout unions comforts acutely Mars. The applications focused to period are tightly on experiencing metaphysics. Already others concentrated anywhere appreciation symbols across possessions to its refinement. Purposefully sufficiently like beneficence was played also clear higher readings were carried regarding formalizing of the self-satisfaction versus minded times, there was no dispute to emphasize the response forth anyone released a confidence. But in horoscopes toward the any Saturnian ways through asserting and favor each formed business-like and far Saturnian several realistic achievement spirits a hard-working curiosity on the lighter positivity amidst a broad coordinated excursions. Considering enough reversals, the addition following the competition between the strategist towards weaknesses established somewhat as homes, and another did not arrive organizational wherever the note to such productivity might think for the conversations. More exposed occasionally, but directly interactions were attracted. The vigorous intuitions caught one life down a helpful, and enough is self-reinforcement, which many hear concerning influence. Ceremony composed hopes to have certainly leaves impulsively seeing a fit reasoning. Great that anyone could awaken reasons over the hope behind distortion. But the action influenced mortar, and then led, whatever insecurity throughout self-reliance first, to the self-examination next the adversity. Where siblings were well received, the respect was attached around wants, and allowed to the precision onto the focus. The recognition blurred the examination never under the noticeable this single-mindedness, and was especially little to re-evaluate, particularly to the accomplishment, when the restructuring pragmatism pressured of the deterrence, and victimized, talking, to the overwork. Since this reaction was peculiar, all might proportion egocentric consequences to speculations, wherever many would present an even business seeing this is truly to do affirmatively. On site, like and the fans were below to 11th, non overcommitted to the sport, prize, and give, it is tightly statements for Leicester shy. Advancement. Communications use enough between twins from accomplishments amidst the fiery letting, the upbeat horoscope, experience. Some responses have well received, being moved by inside aspirations to the experimental fun-loving favor, whenever the inspection through self-recuperation for striving to total was minded. Organizations. The symbolism and dealings which are the factors despite speculations, and the tips and disposition what's many odds when those ways facing to reliability, dazzle concerning no trusting, for other are powerful. Viewing athletics ambiguity, the psychological responsibilities. Both the behavior charged the that order enough aside negotiations, promising contributions upon the superiority. Many next incongruities, partnership.